think this is real.
Can someone independently get on?
Yeah.
Okay, excellent.
I think you should pretend we're on.
All right, I'm going to pretend, I'm going to act as if, but we're checking it out.
Yeah, I still just have the...
Okay.
I'm glad I didn't hit tweet.
Try it again. Still just that. Oh, wait.
Okay.
Okay, now it's...
Oh! It's actually going?
Yes.
All right, yeah! I'm tweeting.
There'll be a minute of you sitting there, but that's fine.
That's totally fine. Oh, that's excitement. That is must-see YouTube. Anyway, welcome to Healthcare Triage Live. We had a bit of a technical difficulty. And I'm not even going to try to describe it to you because it doesn't sound nearly as good as it does in the back end as it did on the front end. Anyway, I'm going to zip through the housekeeping notes at this point because I know you want to get to the content. First, it is June. And therefore, all the people who were patrons on Patreon before June 1st now are getting their perks, calendars, access to the Patreon feed, the ability to participate in our polls and vote on what upcoming episodes will be, seeing episodes a week in advance, getting your name in the credits, getting me to say your name out loud in the credits. That is happening for Cameron, who I believe is our first research associate. I'm not going to hit the table anymore. You should go be a patron. It supports Healthcare Triage, and because of that, yes, as promised, we now have a podcast of the live show. It is available on SoundCloud, and if you use something else, we've got an RSS feed. All the links will be in the description and on our Facebook page, which leads me to our third thing, facebook.com/healthcaretriage, the place where you can find all the great links and the videos and the ability to share them and all other kinds of downloadable great stuff about Healthcare Triage. Join, like the Facebook page. It's a great idea. Coming up, is there any better gift than a Healthcare Triage mug or a poster? But mugs, I think, are even more appropriate for Father's Day. I know it's the best Father's Day gift that I got from me, myself. Mark is away. He's on a boat in Alaska by choice. So there won't be graphics on this episode. There might not be graphics and anything else. And we just wanted to let you know. Part of it is we're trying to figure out how to do this without him. It's much more difficult to run Healthcare Triage Live when we're missing anybody. And speaking of Mark, I'll just say this once instead of making a joke about it multiple times throughout the video. Everything you hear today does not constitute medical advice. If you have any actual medical questions, you should, of course, talk to your doctor and get their opinion. Don't take medical advice from a guy on YouTube, ever. Oh, one more thing. Healthcare Triage won the first NIHCM. The winners in the other category, the New York Times, CNN, and we won our little YouTube show, their Digital Healthcare Media Award, and we're very excited about that. It's a big deal for us. It's a real validation of everything we do. We're going to make this our trophy just like this part of our permanent set, but for today, I'm going to sit right here with me. Let it sit right here with me as we go. Anyway, let's get started. Constance Jeanette Henderson asks, is there any evidence that mouth guards can contact sports? There's no contact stores that tried to say that the chance of having a concussion with a custom-made one was lower than with a store-bought one, but that, if I'm remembering correctly, was still not a controlled trial. It was sort of a cohort study, and it's only an association, and that can be seriously flawed. So the short version of this answer is lots of people think that that is true, that they will prevent concussion. There's not a lot of great evidence for that. You should wear mouth guards for the things mouth guards are intended for, but I'm not necessarily sure they're going to prevent concussions. Question number 2, Eric L. Evidence-based treatment guidelines are certainly important, but some unvalidated treatments are effective for some individuals. How do you think the medical community should balance these two worlds? Okay, when you talk about treatments that can't be proven in medicine, it's important to recognize that even though you see improvements in some people, that what you're likely seeing is placebo effect. You should go watch our episodes on placebo effect, because every treatment that we do has both a placebo effect component and a sort of biologic component or behavioral component. And What we want to know is how much of the effect that we're seeing is placebo versus how much is biologic. And the only way to figure that out is to do good randomized controlled trials, because of course, even people in the control groups will often get a placebo effect. What we want to know is how much of an effect can we get above and beyond that. And that's what you see in a validated trial. If you only look at the unvalidated trials, what you find is that all the effects that you're seeing are the placebo effect or the effect that would happen to just anyone, and you don't know how many people are going to get that. So of course, some people, even with nothing, will see a benefit. The question is, should we be prescribing that? Should we be advising people to do that? Should we be charging them for it? And the answer to that is not nearly as clear. And so to say that unvalidated treatments are effective for some individuals is almost like saying there will be a placebo effect for some people and not others. And that's fine. But the medical community shouldn't really get behind that in prescribing it, charging for it, and doing other things like that. Now, having said that, there could be therapies that really do work that haven't been studied, but of course I always say, why not? Do a study, prove that it works, because if you prove that it works, then everyone will be pushing it in the same way that we do drugs and everything else. I think that there's much less of a dividing line between what we call Eastern and Western medicine and conventional medicine and alternative medicine. What the dividing line should be is stuff that's proven to work and stuff that's not proven to work. And where it comes from and how you do it, I just don't care. If tea is beneficial, I'm going to promote tea. Isabel Cody, is there any evidence to back up the bulletproof coffee trend, or is it all hype? What do you think, Isabel? Yeah, if there was evidence on this, we would be, again, screaming it from the mountaintops. Some people will point to anecdotal evidence, some people will point to non-controlled trials, and some people will just point to a lot of growing evidence that shows that, trying to reduce carbs and increase fat in our diet might actually be beneficial. But, the magic miracle results that people claim to get from bulletproof coffee, which coffee where they oil in it and some other stuff, and it's very high in fat, and usually low in core, saying that, I or somehow anything else. It's a great question. Exercising and eating decrease diabetes. The diabetes prevention program trials, many of which were done partially in Indiana, definitely proved that exercise and diet modifications can reduce your chance of getting diabetes. Type 2 diabetes is caused by increasing resistance to insulin, and so doing that definitely makes things better. Proving that the exercising specifically is increasing your insulin sensitivity directly, not so sure about that. Usually it's tied up in weight loss and doing other healthy things. So I don't know that I could say that proof positive exercising is the thing that's doing it, but certainly healthy lifestyles do good things for you. Holdmaid says, should we be worried about the antibiotics in the meat industry? Are they detrimental to our health either directly by eating them or indirectly by creating superbugs? Great question. I am not a big fan of the widespread use of antibiotics in feed in the meat industry because I don't like to do anything without knowing that there's a direct benefit, especially when there could be harms. And there are definite harms in this case, potentially in the two areas that you've said. Having said that, there's not a lot of evidence that people are being directly harmed by antibiotics in meat. It just doesn't exist. Superbugs is a little bit more, there's a growing body of evidence that resistance and these things are leaking out, and we worry about that. Certainly there's no reason to believe it's not increasing resistance in the animal populations, and that's bad too. Huge widespread use of antibiotics is being more sharply curtailed by the FDA and other organizations for use in meat, and I think that you're seeing even a lot of voluntary changes in the industry because this is a growing concern. And I am more inclined to believe that this is something we should worry about than a lot of other things that people sort of get on their high horse and make the scream du jour. And so I think probably reducing the use of antibiotics in the meat industry widespread like this is probably a good idea. Fubergurch says, that's a great name, we're considering a lift chair for my grandmother. She can get up but with difficulty. Should we preempt or wait until it's necessary? Pros, cons, overwhelmed by marketing, underwhelmed by PubMed. PubMed, of course, is where you would search the medical literature, so this is a savvy person. I'm going to guess there's not a lot of randomized controlled trials, unfortunately, on lift chairs. I'm also going to tell you up again, this is something you should talk about with your doctor because you're making a decision for you. But, the pros and cons of a lot of these lift chairs are the pro is it making your grandma's life easier? Is it improving her quality of life? Is it making it better? And if the answer to that is yes, then, the con is cost, and now she's got this in her home. It's not going to hurt her. And so that should be it. Like, waiting till it's necessary, why? What harms are you worried about? If you can afford it and you think it's going to improve her quality of life, then why not addiction and withdrawals? It's something supported by evidence. Topical corticosteroid addiction? I can imagine sort of a tolerant. Look, there's absolutely problems with the overuse of topical corticosteroids. If you use too much of it, if you use too strong, you can cause thinning of the skin. You can cause changes in coloration of the skin, and you can have some other issues as well. Tolerance is the next level when we think that the steroid is no longer working because we've gotten so used to that. I'm not sure of the evidence base for that. Addiction is when now you crave it and you need it for effects above and beyond the actual medical properties. I'm not sure what people are getting that with respect to topical, like creams. You don't really get a high from the cream, and if you do, my God, you must be using a lot of very strong topical corticosteroids. And so I don't think there's probably a lot of evidence for the addiction. Now, if you're talking about tolerance, I still don't think there's a ton of evidence about tolerance. Usually what we worry about is that we're actually going to cause damage by using the high test corticosteroid for too long, and that's what we worry about, especially on the face. But I don't think I'd be worried about addiction too much, in the sense that I don't think there's a lot of evidence out there. But it's a good question. Horse wieners. Yeah, I think you guys are now just punking me with these names. Do you have an opinion on extended water fasting, a 3-week fast on just water? Yeah, I have an opinion. Why? Why would you do this to yourself? I just hit the table, but I endorse hitting the table for that. Why would you do that to yourself? Why? What possible reason could you have, to want to go on a 3-week fast? Other than, of course, if it's for religious or other belief reasons, or you're on some kind of fast to support something. But there's no medical reason that I can think of to consume only water for 3 weeks. In fact, I imagine that would be dangerous to go without food for 3 weeks with nothing but water. So, yeah, I'm down on it. I just don't think it'd be a good idea. Now, if you're talking about fasting during the day and eating at night, which many people do for various reasons, again, including religious and belief reasons, that's different because you're still eating plenty and you're just not eating during a 12-hour period. But the rest of us call that sleep. So that's fine. But 3 weeks of nothing but water, yeah, I can't get behind that. Rosalie Burns says, what are the benefits of delayed cord clamping post-birth? What are the optimal and minimum times for observed benefit? Prompted by the McMaster University recent publication. So I think this was just in JAMA Pediatrics. So there's been studies. So, we got to a point where we were worried when we delivered babies that if the longer that they were still connected to the umbilical cord and there to the placenta, that now blood would be coming out of them into the cord and the placenta, and if we waited too long to clamp them, or we didn't clamp them fast enough, they would lose a lot of their blood volume and be anemic. And so we said, let's not clamp them. But now there's a growing body of evidence that, that people were actually worried the other direction, that if we didn't clamp them early enough, the blood would be rushing into the baby and they would have too much blood. So, there were lots of arguments up and back, and we came to the idea of let's clamp them as quickly as possible. That was the best bet. Well, there's been a lot of pushback to that. So a lot of studies have recently been conducted that have said, let's wait and let's actually even let them rest from the mother for a period of time while they're still connected. And the growing evidence shows, and this is even with randomized controlled trials, that is not a terrible thing, that delaying the cord clamping leaves the babies with higher levels of iron, which prevents iron deficiency anemia. And the most recent study that Rosalie Burns, who is very up in the medical literature, is saying, is that the super delayed cord clamping actually had long-term effects with kids having even less developmental delay, which could be linked to the iron deficiency, even far out from the very infant period. Now, whether or not that is true it's a very subtle change, and I don't know. But there's a growing body of evidence that we should be doing delayed cord clamping. I think ACOG, the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, is considering reweighing its policies and what they recommend. And I think probably in the future you're going to see more and more delayed cord clamping because the studies appear to be pretty robust and actually supporting the practice of that. Zara Nora says, can you speak about the economics of choosing between healthcare jobs, basically RN, nurse, versus PA, physician, versus MD? All right. So probably in the order of which I read those, you'll make more money. Doctors will make more money than PAs, who often make more money than nurses. But those are different jobs, and it's not just about the money. Doctors have a different job than physician assistants. Physician assistants have a different job than nurses. It's also important to recognize that the schools and the cost of your education probably goes up along those lines. It costs a lot of money to become a doctor. Medical education is very expensive, and I think now the average medical student now leaves their medical school education somewhere between $150,000 to $200,000 or more in debt. And at that point, you've got a house, it's a mortgage, it's crazy. And then you got to be a resident for a couple years. So even after you've become, put yourself $200,000 in debt, you get to work for the next 3 to 7 years, making like $45,000 a year and working 80 hours a week. Not to minimize the amount of money that $45,000 a year is, but when you're working 80 hours a week and you got $200,000 in debt, it's a lot of money, not much money that you're making. And then you might do a fellowship. And so I joke with my kids, including my daughter all the time. This came up recently with a conversation I had with her. I had to go to I finished my education in the 25th grade, and I got my first real job at age 30. It's a long haul to be a doctor. And that was going straight through. I took no breaks. I felt like everybody else in my residency class had joined the Peace Corps. It made me feel like a very slacker, not achiever, and I didn't care. But regardless, the happiness that you are looking for. Attempted Felicity asks, do you have any advice for pre-med students? I'll be applying to medical school this year. Save your money. No, I'm joking. Don't make choices too far ahead of time. I think people enter medical school thinking they know exactly what they want to do, and there's so many options. My biggest thing is don't limit yourself. There's so many different things you could do with a medical degree. What I do, for instance, if you told me this is what I'd be doing when I went to medical school, I would have laughed you out of the room. I had no idea. I'd also say make lots and lots of times for things that make you happy. Don't get so focused on the job and the work that you miss life. That will happen in medical school, that will happen as a resident and everything else. It is very highly populated with type A individuals who've never, had a bad grade and are constantly focused on achievement. A lot of them burn out. Depression is very common among medical students and doctors, as is suicide, unfortunately. So, it's the kind of thing, take care of yourself. Focus on things that'll make you happy. Don't forget to live a good life on top of everything else. All right, Constance Henderson has snuck back into the list. Well done. Oh my God, no, it's the same question. It's the same question with the mouth guards. I'm ignoring it. Leo DeBroke, whose name I'm starting to recognize from week to week. So kudos to you for being a long-time watcher. Is there any research that kids who are more outdoorsy have less allergies and less likely to have asthma than kids that never told to go outside and play? I don't think there's evidence with the with the idea of outdoorsy, but there are more and more people who are buying into the hygiene hypothesis. The idea that by preventing kids exposure to real life like dirt is actually increasing the chance that they have allergies over a longer period of time. And while this was sort of poo-pooed at the beginning, there is a growing body of evidence, as I believe we covered in Healthcare Triage News, because we talked about this with peanuts, that refusing to expose or not allowing kids to get exposure to stuff may increase the chance of allergies. And there was a study very recently that we covered, I think it was in the New England Journal of Medicine, but that's what the Healthcare Triage News was about, that exposing kids to peanut allergens in a controlled way reduced the chance of them having a peanut allergy at 5 years of age or older. Not willy-nilly giving kids peanuts, but exposing kids even who had a peanut sensitivity, when they were very small, exposing them to peanuts actually significantly reduced, randomized controlled trial, reduced the chance they'd have a peanut allergy later on. And this is all tied up in the same thing, that we may want to be exposing kids to stuff so that they are not allergic to it later on. Now, do I have 100% proof that making them go outside and play and getting them all dirty is going to reduce their chance of allergens? No. But I do think that the idea, this hygiene hypothesis, that overworking kids' clean environment may have harms as well as benefits, and that there are constant focus on making sure everything is so clean, maybe overdoing it. I say this, of course, as I'm probably drinking from a dirty mug and everything else, and so I'm just not a clean freak. So take that with a grain of salt. Dalton Hatcher says, on a recent episode of Jeopardy, it was claimed that there's a link between autism and diabetes. Is this true? What's the link? Really? Jeopardy? Was this the answer on Jeopardy? I'd want to see that. I don't know anything about this. Autism's on the rise. Diabetes is on the rise. So there's a link in that respect. But that kids with autism are more likely to get diabetes, or kids with diabetes are more likely to get autism, I don't know that is the case. Certainly I don't know of any direct link, and I don't know how that would be. So I'm going to say no, that I know of. Lisa Pintock says, can we talk about the pros and cons of using proton pump inhibitors? We're talking about infant, or are we talking about adults? Proton pump inhibitors are one of the drugs we use to treat gastroesophageal reflux when you get too much acid in your belly. If we are talking about infant gastroesophageal reflux, then there's not good evidence for proton pump inhibitors. There's not really much in the way of good evidence that they work, and there is a growing body of evidence that they can cause harm. In fact, the chance of getting pneumonia doubles if you're on one of the medications for PPIs. We talked about this in a healthcare triage episode that I remember. I wrote about this at the Upshot of the New York Times as well. So in that case, the cons, cost, side effects, the fact that you're likely to have an increased chance of damage, greatly outweigh the pros of doing nothing. In adults, it's different. In adults, there is a good body of evidence that proton pump inhibitors actually do work for gastroesophageal reflux disease in adults. They can be overused in that we've increased our definition of what we'll call GERD in adults, but definitely there are pros in reducing gastroesophageal reflux disease with the use of medications in adults. There are cons, side effects, other issues, and costs, but for many people, the pros in adults will outweigh their cons. Not true for infants. And the final question goes to Liao DeBroke. I know lots of hospitals are investing in green space or gardens as places for patients to see from their windows or walk through while admitted. What's the research and the effectiveness of this? I doubt we're going to find that it's increasing their health in the sense that they're getting better faster. Maybe there is some evidence, but I don't know of any. But, there are probably other things that they do improve. It can improve quality of life. It can improve people's mood. If you've ever stayed in the hospital, it can be a terribly boring and scary place, especially for kids. Making them healthy and making them happier. I work in children's hospitals, putting game systems in there, making them bright, having child life. These are things that improve kids' quality of life and make them happier while they're in the hospital. And I am all for them, even if they don't make their cancer go away faster or shorten their time to discharge. There are lots of benefits outside of strict medical stuff that we should care about. And improving people's quality of life, making them happier, giving them a nice place to sit while they're admitted to the hospital for a period of time, who's against that? I guess it costs money, but if the hospitals want to spend the money to make their patients happier or provide something like that, that's fine. If we're charging insurance for it again, that's a different story. But it's hard to imagine that trying to invest in a garden or something in a hospital is a bad idea or something that we should be fighting against. And so I bet that there are some benefits that do matter to patients and to their families. So with respect to effectiveness, that's where I would probably put this. And so I'm looking at the clock, and it is probably time for us to wrap up. So for those of you who don't want to listen to me, just do our housekeeping, I guess you could click off now. But regardless, again, you can be the first ones to see our award. We won the NIHCM Foundation First Annual Healthcare Digital Media Award on Monday. It was a big deal for us. We're very excited about it, and this award or this trophy will probably become a permanent addition to the set. Healthcare Triage is now an award-winning show, and it's just another reason that you should consider supporting us on Patreon. Patreon patreon.com/healthcare triage, a way for you, the viewers, to help support Healthcare Triage. You can get some really neat rewards. You also can know that you're helping, to make Healthcare Triage better. If we can get enough money, we'd love to do some really cool new stuff with the show. We can only do that with some support, and therefore we're sort of asking for help in that respect. Healthcare Triage will always be free to watch and share. You need never worry about that. And if you can't contribute, we totally understand, and we love you, and we appreciate you nonetheless. But if you can, patreon.com/healthcare triage. Go to the Facebook page, facebook.com/healthcare triage. You can see a lot of the videos. Our videos, in fact, we're now podcasts. The fact that Healthcare Triage, we reached a certain level on patreon.com. This episode and all episodes to come will be on iTunes, on SoundCloud. We have an RSS feed if you use something else, but it's a great way to listen to Healthcare Triage live with things like that. You should start right now, as soon as I'm done, posting questions for next week's episodes at the link for next week's show. Do not post anything else to this week's show. We will not see it. Or you can tweet questions to Healthcare Triage with the hashtag HCT questions. But we'll look forward to seeing you next week. Start putting your questions right now in next week's link. There will be links down below from any of the shows and other stuff that I referenced, perhaps. We'll see how on top of things we are this week. But certainly there will be a link to next week's show. Thank you, as always, for turning into Healthcare Triage Live. Watch us in the news on Friday and traditional Healthcare Triage on Monday. Thanks again for watching. See you next week.